Okay, welcome back everybody from lunch. Welcome to the next part of our programming, the Green Network. For those of you who've been here for the 2 days and watching the proceedings, you'll know that this has cropped up already a lot in the discussions, but now we're really going to focus on this topic. And the first session for the Green Network is Optimising Energy and Power Usage within Networks. Now, with energy prices reaching all-time highs, it's imperative that telcos make the most efficient use of energy. At the same time, they need to reduce the rate at which they apply this energy within their networks, that is to say, their power usage. So this session explores the needs of the network and considers best practice solutions from telcos and suppliers to optimize the use of energy and power. So let me now ask our guests to introduce themselves. We're going to start on the right, so we're going to hear your name, your job title, and your company, please.
Hi, so Rob Prince. I am Director for the Network and Telecommunications Group at Intel.
Okay, Robert, and where have you come from?
I came from Chepstow, so not too far, just down the M4.
Okay.
So pretty easy.
Local player, Hanen.
Hanen Garcia, Global Telco Solution Manager for Red Hat, not from too far, from Madrid.
Not too far. Okay, over to the other side of the fence.
Good afternoon, Alex Depper. I'm Head of Energy Optimisation for Virgin Media O2.
Okay, and whereabouts are you based at?
North London, so not too far to go.
Okay, and Stephen?
Stephen Spellicy. I lead Service Provider Marketing and Enablement for VMware's Service Provider and Edge Business Unit, and I came from the New England. I flew in from Boston.
Well, welcome to the Old England. So welcome everybody. Now before we start, just like the DSP Leaders World Forum sessions, we have a poll, but we have one poll for all of our 3 Green Network sessions. So let's take a look at that poll. Here is the question we are asking. The question is, how can DSPs become more energy efficient? And like the other polls, we have 5 options. So it's on the TelecomTV website. If you're watching online, please vote now. We will take a look at the results a bit later on. Obviously in the room, please do vote and make a difference. And we'll take a look and see how those votes have been cast a bit later on. So we have a number of talking points here in this session. So starting with, are current telecom networks as energy efficient as they could be? It's a great starting point, and we're going to start with Alex, because your job is all about this, isn't it?
It certainly is, yeah. And I guess it's probably not really giving away too many secrets to say, no, I don't think we are as energy efficient as we could be. And I think if you were going to wave a magic wand and rebuild our network from scratch today, the energy profile would look drastically different to serve mostly the same purpose. So, the reason is, we are the amalgamation of numerous companies, numerous different roadmaps, numerous different product lines and in economic conditions over the last 30 years. And very few of those really considered energy as one of the main drivers in the architecture of those solutions. So we've got an awful lot of sins of the past to catch up on and improve upon. So, whilst as well as we're doing that, though, we've also got to look to the future, obviously, and think about how we can deliver new services that are far more efficient than the ones today, and how we can get customers off those legacy platforms and onto those new services. So, we're on a journey. And I think that journey took a drastic turn last year when the energy markets flipped on their head. Obviously we've been very focused on our 2040 net zero goals across all scope 1 and 3. But I think up until last year, and I guess my role is born out of that, efficiency could get lost in the broader net zero goals. So you could be green without being efficient. And so I think the industry's had a really sharp wake-up call last year. And now efficiency is very much front of mind. And I sit outside of our CSR and ESG initiatives. I'm very much within our technology strategy area. And it's kind of making sure that we bake efficiency into a core tenet of our ESG strategy. And so I think the industry is aligning on those lines now.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up here, because you've got a very specific job title, and I'm sure you speak to other network operators as well, and kind of swap notes and so on and so forth. Are more operators having people who are dedicated particularly to this role these days, or are you one of the first?
I haven't come across anyone with a job title as specific as mine just yet. I was having a look around the room while I've been here and I haven't seen it, but I think, I'll be honest, my role, it's brand new. We're still figuring out exactly how involved I can get. I look across fixed and mobile, consumer, wholesale, data center. My remit is huge, and I can only really, if you like, be an evangelist for a lot of these things. And I think, kind of right-sizing that effort, working out where I'm best to put my time and how big we need to scale this effort, right? What's the payback on that? They're projects we're still working through. So it's very much, it's been a busy 18 months since I took on this role.
I bet, absolutely. What a time. Hanen, if I can come to you next, what's your view on how the energy efficiency of communications networks has been evolving in recent years? I mean, how much more work is there to go?
That's a good question. So I will agree with Alex as well. What he was saying is you ask the question, is how most efficient we are. I think right now we're as efficient as we can be. Now, is we take into consideration the technology that's available today, there is much more that can be done. There is a lot of work that is being focusing on, improving capacity, improving how things can be done in a better way, in a more sustainable way. We have been working with partners like Intel and others into how much we can do from what is there available. But there is work that is being done into addressing the most consuming part of the operation. So, as we take the global picture, we have seen the statistic, right? 3% of energy consumption comes from the telecommunication industry, around between 2 and 3%, and 70% of that consumption comes from the radio access network, right? So we have to be conscious of how we're going to be building and how the operators are going to be building those future generation of networks, that we take that already into account on the sustainability side of things. Of course, as I was mentioning, there is already work that's been done. There is work that's been done in ORAN Alliance, for example, into how can introduce technology into trying to control and better, still providing a good service, still providing the service that customers expect, but trying to reduce as well that power consumption.
Yeah, which is exactly what we were talking about sort of in one of the sessions yesterday, how to become more energy efficient, but not impact service delivery and service innovation.
Correct.
Robert, from the Intel perspective, is this a topic that has that's gone up the stack and come to the top of conversations in the past couple of years?
It's a huge topic, it really is, and completely agree with the earlier comments, which is that there's so much more we can do and really must do, right? I think, we've heard data points the last couple of days in terms of the consumption that the operators consume, but also looking forward, depending on what, your favorite data point is, the amount of traffic growth that we see over the next few years, for example, 4x over the next 5 years is pretty dramatic. And so a big part of our conversations that we're having with our customers is our customers are obviously driving us extremely hard to drive not just performance and the key KPIs that we need to underpin, but also, of course, deliver on that energy efficiency. So as an example, at Intel, we've committed to improve the power efficiency of our client and server ranges by 10x by the end of this decade, right? And even if you look at the most recent data point with our 4th generation Xeon platform, that's a 2.2x comparison to our 2019 baseline, which is ahead of our predictions. So we're well on track for that, but there's more we need to do. For example, reducing the carbon footprint of reference designs, obviously working with the software community and our partners very significantly to take advantage of the underlying platforms, if you will, that are available today, right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity not just to talk about futures, but to talk about, hey, it's here now. So what more do we need to do as an industry to get that into commercial deployment?
And is there a greater focus in R&D on this now than there has been in the past? Not saying it hasn't been in the past, but is it even greater now?
It's a massive paradigm shift because if we think about the journey we've been on, with our partners and obviously working very closely with the operators, if we go back a decade, it was all about performance. And that was the key KPI that we were always working towards as we worked, from these fixed function devices, moving into software and fully programmable infrastructures. That was the kind of key KPI at that point. But of course, over the last couple of years, it's performance, network KPI, and energy efficiency. You have to do both of those things. And as we mentioned earlier, it's an absolutely key part of the agenda on pretty much every conversation we have. And it's not just the right thing to do from a commercial perspective, but clearly from an overall sustainability point of view. As an industry, we've got to address it.
Okay. And Stephen, the question here was, are current telecom networks as energy efficient as they could be? And it seems the consensus is, well, there's only so much you can do, but things must be changing pretty quickly.
Yeah, almost every customer that we work with, and I represent the business that leads with the telco cloud infrastructure. So most of our customers are modernizing their infrastructure, and they're moving away from traditional sort of monolithic approach to a more horizontal-based approach. And with that, they're looking very specifically at sustainability as being one of the reasons for the implementation. So modernizing the stack means not only gaining the efficiencies of agility and more automation and more intelligence in the system, but it's also about shrinking the footprint. It's about densifying it. It's about consolidating and then taking advantage of the feature sets that can get more out of the physical hardware in a smaller physical footprint. And partnerships with Intel drive out much higher performance at a lower cost from a power consumption perspective. So would I say that everyone's at the same place? No. I think it's a continuum. I think that's where some customers have been very aggressive in their sustainability goals and are really driving forward to make an impact sooner than later. And VMware ourselves, we have a 2030 ESG, and we today are carbon neutral in our data centers, in every data center that we operate. Obviously, we have advantage. Our technology platform was designed 20 plus years ago to do exactly that. So we are working with our customers in telco to better understand the things that we've been able to instrument in our software and how they can apply those things in their own data centers.
Okay. Well, if I can stick with you to come to the next point, because obviously, we're at a place now, everybody wants to improve the current situation. The operators will have their plans and their strategies, but what can the technology developers, providers, suppliers, the vendors do to help? How can you make Virgin Media O2's life and all other network operators' life easier?
I think the first step is understanding the problem. So having good instrumentation, but also analytics to understand the impact of the power consumption and footprint in their data center. So from my part of the world, we have tools that allow us to look at the workloads and the impact on power. That just knowledge is power, right? So understanding how you're behaving, getting a good, strong baseline for performance, but also for consumption, and then being able to then apply the features that are in the platform to be able to make better use of that hardware. I mean, you can, with consolidation in a traditional data center, we see conservative power reductions anywhere between 20 and 30%. So that's just right off the bat. Put it on a hyper-converged or a highly consolidated infrastructure footprint. Utilize Intel-based technology and drive more throughput and performance, but at a lower cost. The other is working on not only instrumenting the platforms to be more efficient and the workloads that reside on those to be more efficient. So that's collaboration between, in my world, it's the network equipment providers and the ISVs, which are making network functions, both in traditional VNF as well as cloud native functions. Having those software developers who work in the various network equipment providers and ISVs be thinking first about power as they design their NFs, so they can take further advantage of the platform capabilities. I mean, it is an ecosystem challenge, and I think if we pair up and work with our customers, we can come to the market with the very best solution to solve this problem.
Okay. So that's kind of, working on something in development moving forward. But Alex, for yourself, I'm sure that one of your key considerations is how can your technology partners help you to make your network more efficient in terms of what's already deployed?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, your first point, you touched on it. Data is key. We can't optimize what we don't really know is there. There's a lot of assumptions at the moment. So making data accessible, making it available, making it interoperable with OSS systems, EMS systems, BMS systems, so that we can bring it into one place rather than having to fish around. That will speed up our workflow and our decision-making massively. There's a bit of a laundry list, really. So looking backward, we need to migrate customers in the most efficient, successful way possible. We need to have, and that starts, it's a whole company operation becoming efficient, right? We need our frontline sales guys and commercial guys to be able to find new products that enhance value for our customers. Now that's good for the customers, and it means we can get a lot of this stuff out the network that we don't want to be servicing anymore. And tools to help us do that, and strategies to help us do that, I think would be massive value add. And obviously, kind of when we're looking to the new technologies, there's a whole new world here. We're moving from, kind of legacy hardware to virtualized platforms, trying to standardize energy impacts on a key performance metrics. So in terms of whether that's kilowatt hours per terabit, or we're looking at kind of per customer served. We just need to kind of have that really clear vision of, okay, here's your roadmap, and here's what that means from an efficiency perspective. And so a lot of projects I've been at the moment, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the energy impact is, and I think there's probably a better way for us to kind of work with our vendors to know that impact up front without having to do the sort of the magic maths in between.
Okay. Hanen, from Red Hat's perspective, what can be done to help move things on from here on for the network operators? What's the best point of attack?
We have been doing a lot of work on sustainability. One of the and one needs to understand that it's not just a one layer, right? It's the whole stack, right? So we have been working with partners like Intel on the chipset. We have been working with OEMs on the hardware itself. We have been working on our CAS platform and working with the software vendors, the ones that are going to be this function that are going to be running on that network. One of the things that is clear, and Alex make the point there, is about understanding. Okay, the first thing is to measure what are we against, right? And then we can go into adding the logic and adding the AI, whatever we have been talking this morning as well. That will come. But the first thing is building the knowledge, understanding how we can measure things, and that we have been working that on two angles. We have been working on the open source community, so we have been part of the Kubernetes and the CNCF Foundation on energy and efficiency, trying to understand the platform. Projects like Kepler, where we actually bring the capability of measuring how much a software is consuming on a cloud native infrastructure. I don't want to open the topic of what is cloud native, but I think we understood that one. But it's critical, and this is as well part of the work that we're doing on the other side with NGM, right? On the telemetry and especially on the metering group, because there have been work and standardization have been done on metering, right, on the existing infrastructure. What is about and what needs to be done when we're going to be moving, because the telcos are moving to this cloud native infrastructure. So this is part of the work that probably Anita is going to tell you more about that. That's part of the work that we are doing. Of course, this is into taking consideration that there is, at the same time, there is the standard cycle as well that Robert was mentioning, right? That is moving on the technology that's underneath. So you have all the pieces are moving, telcos moving into this cloud native environment, hardware capabilities are being, are now available not only on the CPU, but we talk about the NICs and all the acceleration that is required, especially on the radio access network. There is much more capabilities that will be available even on the CPU, but I will let Robert touch on that. So there is a lot of work that is being put in place to help operators to reduce that energy, to be more energy efficient at all the layers of the stack.
Okay. And Robert, you already mentioned that Intel has this timeline, this plan to have the products be much more energy efficient in the past. But are there other things you can do as well? Are there new partnerships, new collaborations that Intel is brokering to try and advance in areas that maybe you weren't looking at before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it drives collaboration across the industry. There's no doubt about that. But I think that the things also is very important to go faster. We need to be very practical, right? And I think one of the things we've learned over the past decade by working directly with the communication service providers is that it really is working with very specific workloads, understanding what can be done together with our partners, right, to fully exploit the underlying capabilities. And just to pick a couple of examples, I mentioned earlier, performance is important, but obviously power as well. So, for example, in Mobile World Congress, we announced, on our latest 4th generation Xeon platform that we could achieve, 1 terabits per second on the platform, but at the same time, using software tools, for example, Integrated Power Manager, reduce the real-time power consumption by 30%, right? Which is pretty significant. And the other piece, of course, as we know, and you mentioned it, the radio access network is the area of the network that consumes most of the power. And when you look at the latest generation, you can double the capacity of the RAN. You can do it on the same power envelope. So effectively, you're doing twice the performance per watt. And in addition to that, you're building accelerator capabilities into the CPU. That means you don't have to put additional PCI cards into the platform. All that requires very focused engagement with our partnerships and the industry to bring it to life, because all we do is expose it at the silicon level. Okay, we've got thousands of software engineers that can help us build tools to expose it, but the reality is, unless we work as a team, right, and we're very, very focused on the customer KPI, and it's not synthetic stuff, it has to be real workloads that we work on a day-to-day basis. That's how we've learned, I think, over the past decade, and I think we need to accelerate it. I think also the operators need to demand it, in their procurement processes, so that when we do the art of the possible, unless it's exploited through the value chain, it's pointless. So getting that kind of end-user customer pull, if you will, to hold us accountable to deliver on it, I think is also very, very important.
Okay. Going to come to the audience for questions in a second. But before that, Alex, what do you want from the vendor community that would help make your life better, your job easier? What would you like somebody to turn up at your door with tomorrow?
I think I'll go back to, it's that engagement on how do we get migrate customers with the least friction possible, with the least risk and with the least friction, because once we can do that, it was mentioned yesterday many times, right? We are a hugely risk-averse industry. We do not, we like resilience. We like to narrow down change windows, and I think the kind of vendor support to kind of de-risk that as much as possible, and to help that journey be as smooth as possible. Even if potentially we can migrate hardware without necessarily even having to disturb the customer and make them change their habits, something like that would just make that sort of on the back end, we can start tidying away the old kit, start thinking about condensing the sites, and focusing on the future roadmap. So, yeah, support, because I think we're a very build-focused industry. We love building new things, and I think sometimes it's we forget that we need to go and tidy up after ourselves. And so, being in this job, you're acutely aware that I've got one eye on the front, but I've got two eyes on the back, right? And I need some support, and I think the vendors, more support on that side of things would be very helpful.
Okay. And just to point out as well, your remit, we talk a lot, and quite rightly, about the radio access network, but you've got a fixed cable infrastructure as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. So I come from the fixed side, so came with a red jersey on, and kind of it's, when we look at the network, we've got kind of from an energy perspective, three distinct sort of domains, if you like: the cabinets, the RAN, and the technical estate, which is, from the fixed side, is vast. Sort of more than 400 sites that we are trying to corral and manage, and you kind of multiply that by the number of platforms. It's a huge task, and just coordinating that, pulling those roadmaps together into a single vision, and working out where we can push those BAU lifecycle roadmaps a bit harder to get energy savings. This is all new language. No one really thought about lifecycle in terms of energy until last year when the price went crazy. Right. So this is a whole new dimension, and on the plus side, it's a great driver. All of a sudden, that platform you didn't have the reason to get rid of, hey, I've got 50,000 reasons now why you should take that out. My worry is, ironically now, obviously as the price is coming down, these kind of great business cases we've got set up, they start to look a bit less appealing. So the irony of things getting easier. But yeah, so that, I think, support on, don't forget the legacy stuff, and help us move forward, because we can do more together, then.
Okay, great. Any questions from the audience at this point? Okay, we've got one over here and one over here. So name, rank, and serial number, please.
Charlie Ashton from Napatech. Actually, it's not really a question, it's more just an observation.
Can you turn it into a question, though, Charlie? So,
is it true that... Is it true that with 5G networks, obviously we've moved away from implementing the core network in fixed function appliances, and it's now implemented as virtualized software. But one of the things that means is we now have the situation where we have general purpose server CPUs that are being used primarily for running networking functions, which of course they weren't really designed for and optimized for. So we can actually achieve significant energy savings by offloading those networking functions onto an infrastructure processing unit, as Intel calls them, or a smart NIC, which thereby not only saves a lot of energy, but also, very importantly, it frees up those CPU cores to be running the kind of applications and services that those general purpose CPUs were actually designed for.
Okay, thanks for phrasing that as a question. And we are going to come to this because we're going to talk more about the sort of more cloud-oriented infrastructure and operations in a second. So we're definitely going to come to that point. There was another question over here as well. So we won't forget that question. Charlie, thank you.
Thank you very much. Phil Shepherd, Clear Technology Consulting. Just aware there is a physical limit to how much reduction in energy usage you can get to, or in theory, because, for example, on a radio network, you at least need to provide enough power to get the radio waves out there and transmit. Is there some work, or has there been work done on what level of efficiency savings can be achieved due to the physical work that has to be done by whatever system it is that you're using? Is there like targets for efficiency, based upon that limit?
Okay. Good question. I'm turning to you here, Alex, because hopefully if there was something like that, you might know about it.
It's a very good question, and I haven't done those sums yet, but it's sort of, that'll probably be my homework for the weekend to go away and theoretically, what could it be? But I think, in what situation are we looking? Are we talking about today where we're running 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, or are we thinking 2035 when we are thinking about 5G and 6G? I think we're as efficient as, to echo Hanen, we're as efficient as we can be today, and we need to work about, look to where can we go, and we operate within the realms of the real, unfortunately, and with 16,000 musts to service, we can only go as fast as we can go. So, but it's an interesting point. I'll definitely go away and have a think about that one.
No, great question. So to swing back round to Charlie's question and our next talking point, the networks are moving, and we heard as well from Arno this morning, as the operators move to 5G standalone, that is a cloud-native, cloud-oriented architecture. But will this move and this shift towards cloud-oriented systems only be a help in terms of energy efficiency, or does it bring some new challenges, perhaps? So let me see. Hanen, do you want to start there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, it does. And this is what I was saying about, example, the work that we're doing on the next generation mobile networks forum around telemetry, right? The fact that you have all this disaggregation on the stack bring, a new paradigm in terms of how we measure what is being consumed and be able to actually spot not just to what CNF, but actually what part of that CNF, because it's disaggregated as well at the same time, is the one that is consuming or can be optimized in terms of power consumption. I'm not saying that there's bad code. I say it could be better code as well, right? So these are the kind of thing that we are looking into on the platform itself, right, on the CAS, because this is features that customers will expect from the platform, right? Be able to actually acquire that data and actually be able to process that data and then be able to apply whatever technology they would like to apply into, taking action, taking decisions, and taking actions into the network. Now there is, and related to the question that will come from the audience as well, I mentioned the work on the ORAN, right? Trying to see how the architecture that is presented by ORAN with this aggregation of the EU, the implementation of the RIC, the intelligent controller on the radio, and what capabilities can be done in there, because there is as well telemetry in there, right? Measurements that is being taken from the different elements, the active elements, and looking into to what degree radios can be actually, disabled at some moment in time to consume, to still providing the service and the reality on the service, but trying to reduce that power consumption on the radio access network. So it's at all the layers. It's not just one thing that we need to focus on, and this is what we have been doing with the entire ecosystem, trying to address those concerns, creating the awareness, on the community as well, on the open source community, trying to understand that the software that we are bringing as well is, have to take that as well into consideration, and actually building the tools and providing the tools to help them as well to do that part of the work.
Okay. And Robert, from networks are changing in their architecture and design, but they won't all be the same. And even within Open RAN, for example, there's lots of different ways that you might actually physically construct a network with different elements throughout it. How's that playing into the 5G story, and whether all networks might be efficient as they could be?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course there's going to be challenges, as you mentioned, but the net is that we've got to get into a cloud-native environment, right, to fully leverage the opportunity to build these agile networks, for example, where, these networks can follow the traffic pattern and make sure they, burst up and dial down where appropriate. And I think that, it's imperative that we obviously bring that into the market, because it's not just as it relates to following the power curve of the traffic pattern, but also basically our carbon footprint, where we look at examples where instead of putting a feature in a piece of hardware, obviously it's all going to be driven by software. And the other aspect is, of course, if we've got multiple devices at what is increasingly the intelligent edge, we have the opportunity to replace that with less devices, if that makes sense. Where we can also deliver more, digital services off the back of it. And again, I think it's key that we work very closely as an industry to solve these issues, because not one of us alone is going to be able to solve the challenges as we disaggregate. But there is an opportunity, I think, for us also to bring in propositions on best known configurations, certifications, and things like that de-risks the operator as they move in this general direction.
Okay. Alex, and how much of your time goes into, what the situation might be in, 2 years' time? If the 3G networks have been switched off, that could be a gain, but by introducing new systems and new architectures in 5G and then thinking about 6G, might you just be back to square one?
Well, just picking up on sort of what cloud, and coming at this with sort of an M&E focus, because private cloud for us means standardizing a lot of hardware. It means a lot of opportunities to new cooling technologies, right? Moving away from kind of what we look at with legacy, which is kind of general AC room cooling. We're very much hot and cold aisle, but we're moving into a world of adiabatic cooling, submersive cooling, and that brings us, kind of into the world of the hyperscalers. So lots of opportunities from private cloud on that. And then a word on sort of public cloud, which is, that very much changes how we account for energy. Once we've gone to the public, it suddenly becomes a scope 3 deal. It doesn't sit within the normal P&L lines, and the manager's different. So I think it's just an awareness from me that, we potentially lose some control, we lose some visibility, and we need to just be ready to how we handle those efficiency metrics when they no longer appear in the same part of the P&L as they used to. So.
Okay. And Stephen, you're starting to see some of the networks adopt these new architectures. Have you seen any kind of, let's say, surprises in terms of energy efficiency? It's such a big topic and it's cropping up all the time, but you've still got two camps that say, well, don't go down route A because there's no proof that it will be more energy efficient. Stick with what we're doing at the moment. Everything pre-integrated, lots of energy efficiency focus there.
Obviously, I think as humans we tend to look at the bigger problem first and we go, let's go after that one. But there are a lot of smaller problems you can solve. Things like workload placement into infrastructure pods that exist in data centers that have a lower impact on energy. That's a very low-hanging fruit opportunity. That's driven by automation. As we go kind of upstack and we look at areas like the RAN, which have traditionally been the largest power consumers, as you guys mentioned earlier, this is a great area of innovation. And when we speak to customers, this is the big shiny object, right? They want to lower the power impact in the RAN and the overall cost of running the RAN. And one area that our customers are very excited about, we introduced the RAN Intelligent Controller back last year in March, and today we have 25 plus ISVs who are part of our partner program. Inside of that, we're working on a number of use cases, and the ones that are really, really getting operators excited and interested in utilizing the RIC as they design their next generation RAN is areas of power consumption and reduction, but also spectral multiplication, channel prediction and optimization, traffic steering. So there's all these great optimization things that they can do in order to reduce the burden and the work that happens inside the RAN and actually get more value out of the RAN asset. Obviously, these are technologies that are early in their evolution, so they're going to require experimentation and time to perfect. And the standards have to be all aligned and caught up. In other words, the customer's got to be moving towards an open RAN infrastructure to gain most of the benefits. But I'd say the excitement is around turning on some of these capabilities to take advantage of next-gen technology that could potentially reduce the overall burden of power and management. Automation is another area in both the core and the RAN that can actually greatly impact in a positive way scope 2 and 3 related to reduction of truck rolls, primarily reducing the amount of emission that comes from someone jumping in a van and going to a cell site. There's a great opportunity to use software technology to eliminate some of the mundane tasks, so those tasks that could be better served in closed loop actions or driven through a software workflow. So I think there are things that they can do today that can greatly impact and improve how they operate tomorrow.
Okay. Just going to check the audience very quickly because the time has actually run away with us very quickly, and we do need to wrap up a bit soon. But I just want to make sure that we haven't missed any questions from the audience before we maybe get to the final talking point. And if there's nothing more from out there, now you mentioned, Stephen, scope the various scopes of what can be part of the strategies for network operators. Should the operators focus initially on their scope 1 efforts, what's right in front of them right now, and tackle scope 2 and 3 later, or is this something that should all be addressed at the same time? So we'll maybe start with you and work our way across the panel.
Honestly, much of what we've been talking about is covered in scope 1, and I think their mindsets are already focused on this. What you can do is start to take on some of the other challenges in scope 2 and 3 in tandem. Because there are technology solutions that exist today, we've discussed a bunch of them, that can be implemented to lower the overall burden of power consumption today. In tandem, look at those areas that they can impact for scope 2 and scope 3. And many are possible today. Reduction in travel costs, I mentioned truck rolls. Building more efficient products and services. That can be a part of the supply chain process of everything from the CPE to, to your own systems that you build and manufacture. Those are things that can be staged and planned and produced over the next year plus outside of scope 1, which I think can be really started today.
Okay.
I think you have to look at them all together, and certainly VMO2's Better Connections plan is 2040 for all three. I think the natural tendency is to go for scope 1 and 2, and certainly that's my remit where I exist.
Okay.
Because you have your, that's where you have your hands on those controls. You can have the direct control, but the scope 3 challenges are so big, you can't kick it down the line. You've got to be on it now. So we're sort of launching recycling handsets. With millions of handsets recycled, millions of set-top boxes and CPEs recycled, and launching new products. So we're looking at our little Stream IP box, which is, kind of uses a fraction of the power. So we've got good indication around. I think we've announced today, actually, we've exceeded our year 1 target for scope 1 and 2, incidentally, as well. But scope 1 and 2 is natural, it's safer, but the scope 3 challenges there, the 2040 will come around very quickly, I think, about scope 3.
Not too quickly. Hanen, what's your view here?
There is, we mentioned, and Stephen said already, right? All the tools and capabilities that are there to help them on scope 1. Automation has been one of the critical, points on discussion of everything we're doing. Core, RAN, CPE, fixed line, everything is automation. It was a long discussion on automation, right? That definitely will help them on the scope 2 as well. Now, unfortunately, the scope 3 is the one that is optional on the report, but usually the one that is the biggest in terms of emissions. And this is where vendors have to be more conscious as well, right? So at Red Hat, we have been taking this seriously, so we are as well committed to reducing the carbon footprint for all the activity that we are doing, so that we contribute as well to in that direction towards the customer, because it is important that the operators take all this consideration, because they have the customer themselves, right? The customer themselves will be absorbing that from the telco on the scope 3, which is quite important, and we're seeing now more and more those, at least on the enterprise customer as well, being as well cautious about, is I going to be investing and I'm going to be partnering with a technology partner, then I want that technology partner to follow my philosophy on what the carbon footprint should be.
Okay. And Robert, finally, scope 3, something that really needs to be addressed now?
Yeah, it's essential. I mean, at Intel, we've been tracking scope 1 and scope 2 for the last 2 decades, investing heavily in scope 3. And I think the thing we really like about scope 3 is we all hold each other accountable for it. And I think, as you mentioned, that's the biggest portion that we all collectively need to address. And I think that the fact of the matter is that, probably everybody in this room is part of our scope 3. We're part of your scope 3. Yeah. And, having, defined KPIs that drive us in that direction, and we work together on it. I think the other thing just to mention is that I think the industry is happy to share in this space, right? Non-competitive, we understand what we need to do, and I think best practice sharing is going to be very important. So, yeah, scope 3, essential.
And the good news is it's not just lip service anymore. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. We do need to leave it there for now. That session went really, really quickly. We're having a short break now, about 20 minutes, just enough time for coffee. The pinball tables are still open, but the competition is over, I'm afraid. So anybody hoping for cup glory, I'm afraid that chance is gone. See you back here at about 3:10 when Guy and his guests will be discussing how to develop a sustainable ecosystem. But first, let's please show our appreciation for our panelists. Thank you very much.